the issue of immigration, because in fact, it was a recent poll, and we get it here regularly on FiveAA. Callers call in and say, let's stop immigration, too many people, not Australian, all the rest of it. But the poll in a newspaper recently finding around 60% almost of Australians want lower immigration rates in the future. What does that mean for the country moving forward? What does it look like? And maybe how much do things cost if we don't have people generating an economic return? Melanie Macfarlane is an immigration expert from Migration, and she joins me now. Melanie, good afternoon. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, Matthew. Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Now, the immigration rate, if we slow it down, obviously that is going to have an economic repercussion, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. Absolutely. I mean, prior to the pandemic, we'd had 26 years of consecutive economic growth in Australia, which is almost unsurpassed, I believe, by most countries in the world. And during that time, immigration numbers actually had been rising. So I don't actually think that's any coincidence. And so there's definitely an economic impact with regards to immigration rates. And so if you bring those down too low, then there could be issues, actually.
Okay, like what? What are we talking about?
Well, the fact is, right now, it's actually been widely advertised throughout the media that there are skill shortages throughout Australia, and we're seeing it in our business. The volume of our business is just going up and up. It has, during the pandemic, yes, borders have been closed, but we've been still helping skilled workers to come in through with travel exemptions. And the main issue is that if you don't have enough skilled workers in a country, I mean, let's face it, Australia is a small population, and ultimately it's only a working population of about 12 million because we have such a large aging population. So if you don't have enough skilled workers in the system, then businesses are not going to be able to continue. And yes, there is the argument that wages are driven down by immigration because employers then don't have to pay so much, there's exploitation, et cetera, et cetera. But the reality is, in some industries, some Australians don't actually want to work in them for a long time. We're talking industries like hospitality, childcare, and so on. But then there are others where wages are very high. We've just placed a computer network engineer, for example, from overseas into a company, and his salary is $120,000. And the company had to show labour market testing to show that they couldn't bring people in. So the thing is, if businesses close, or if they do have to pay very inflated wages, that can then put up the cost of, let's say, you might be paying $11 for your latte or double the cost of your apple for your child's lunchbox. There's a whole bunch of economic repercussions that, of course, people are not necessarily going to see.
Yeah, that's right. And you don't think of it, I guess, in those terms. You just see the numbers of people and assimilation maybe and everything else. But if you don't have the migration coming in and the jobs that are created as a result of that, whether they be in a supermarket, a coffee shop, or in a tech company who hires the people, then ultimately, everything slows down. That's what you're saying.
That's right, exactly. And I mean, we've seen it actually with international students. Prior to COVID, we had, I think the numbers are up to about 600,000 international students in Australia. It's about half that now, although, of course, the border's now opening from the 1st of December, and we'll see what happens there because actually it's quite difficult to grant student visas at the moment. But yes, I mean, that's an industry that was generating 240,000 jobs, which is more than mining and iron ore, for example, and a surplus of about $40 billion for the economy. And then that has a trickle-on effect into the accommodation sectors, into tourism as well, because those tourists actually bring those students bring high-paying tourists in via their parents, their families, siblings, etc. And so that has an enormous knock-on effect on the economy. And I think the government has actually realised this, and there's been various pilot projects. But that's one industry that brings in temporary migrants that really has impacted the economy during this pandemic, actually.
Yeah, well, certainly overseas students here in SA, in Adelaide, it's one of the biggest drivers of the Adelaide CBD economy, is having, apartments here in the city with the universities nearby full of students who just haven't been here. And You can see that when you stroll down the mall. It's that little bit quieter. The shop's that little bit emptier, so obviously, it's having an impact right across the board. So, I forget the amount of money it generates in the city. Something like, hundreds of millions of dollars anyways. I don't want to give it a figure. I'll be way out, but it's a lot of money.
Yes, it would be. I wouldn't be surprised if it was about $50 million or more than that, because these are looking at all the figures state by state. South Australia has definitely been impacted. Hence, the state government has really been looking at the pilot program. They were very much instigating the pilot program to bring back international students. And they have been for about the last year or so.
Yeah.
So, yes. So I think international students will be able to come back there very, very soon. Yes, because of this impact that's been felt by the state. And indeed, it's actually very much tied to immigration too. What's very interesting, and has been in the last few days, are the government announcements about actually offering more opportunities to students to be able to migrate, as long as, they have the right skill set and so on. And South Australia has been very vocal in that regard, and very much providing pathways to those who do study in the state and who want to stay and who have the right skilled occupations that are actually in demand in the state. So in fact, it's really beneficial, in fact, for the country. It's understandable that people think, well, it's going to be too much, there'll be congestion and so on and so forth. But in the long term, and of course the immigration is used very much as a political weapon.
Yes.
Sure, you're very aware of that. But in the long term, it's incredibly beneficial for the economy.
Yeah. What's the argument where people would say, look, back in the 50s and 60s and before that even, we built trains, we built trams, we built cars, we built washing machines. We used to make everything here. Now we don't. We clearly don't need that level of, for instance, post-war migration, that big boom that we had from 1949 through to around 1972 or thereabouts. So we're not doing any of that now. So we don't need workers or people coming in to pick up some of those jobs.
Well, you're right in that regard. Although I know that a lot of Italians, that's when a lot of the Italians and Greeks came in actually and worked on the farms and so on in agriculture. And migration has been very good for agriculture to keep, got a ticket workers have been coming in.
Melanie, your phone is breaking up terribly at the moment. I don't know. Try moving around, face the other way or something.
Yes, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
I can a tad better, but it's still very scratchy.
Should be better. I think for some reason I just...
Oh no, you're terrible. Terrible.
Oh, I'm sorry about that, Matthew.
That's okay.
My apologies.
No, that's...
Is it getting any better
Yeah,
now?
it is actually. So, okay, you're talking about people working on the land, agriculture?
Yes, that's right. And, so yes, I understand. I mean, the fact is, I think, looking at an industry like manufacturing, I think there's a lot more to that than immigration, there's globalization and so on and so forth, and people wanting to take that work overseas, etc. So it's not, but there's a lot of jobs here in Australia that are highly skilled jobs that there hasn't been enough education and training in order to be able to get people into those jobs. So simple trades and technicians and so on. We're bringing a whole lot of people in for a large engineering company right now to work as technicians for them. And they in turn then train Australians. Because I totally understand the argument about needing to have more education and training and so on. But that training can also come from overseas, from the experts and the skills people who are coming from overseas. So there are just so many industries where immigration is required. I think to look at manufacturing, that's just one area.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Melanie, look, very interesting discussion. Immigration, I think the upshot is immigration drives economic growth, which benefits everyone essentially. So, all right. I appreciate your time this Saturday afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew, for the opportunity. Have a great afternoon.
You too. Melanie Macfarlane there, immigration expert from Migration. And the argument is, well, if you have lower immigration, costs will go up. You'll find fewer skilled workers, which means training someone to make you a latte might end up costing you $11. It might do that anyway because the price of coffee's going up. So if you add that to it, well, it might be $20. Imagine that. I mean, that's just ridiculous, but that's the example essentially, that fewer skilled people and fewer workers in the country. And given that, okay, 25 million people, well, half are old, half are retired, or getting that way. And then you've got young people as well who aren't in the workforce yet. So the whole economy is supported by, I don't know, 10 million, 12 million people at the moment. And there we go. What happens when that number decreases if we don't boost that through either a birth rate going up or increased immigration or a combination of the both? Then we could be in very dire straits in trying to pay for our retirement, yours and mine and your kids and grandkids moving forward. Interesting. Thoughts on that? 8223 0000, 1:15 now.